I want to explain about agrarian transformation, land reform as a pillar of sustainable development in Indonesia. By Arif Firmansyah, Lina Jamila, and Leah Sukmamulia. Introduction. The increase in population in several large cities, whether due to population growth due to births or urbanization, has also increased development activities. This has the consequence of the need for an increased land supply to accommodate development activities, both for providing places to live and other activities. As a result of the need to provide land supported by technological advances, it is increasingly encouraging to utilize existing space both above the ground and above ground below the ground surface. Facts show that in several large cities worldwide, the space within the Earth's body and the air above the Earth's surface has been used to accommodate population activities, including shops, restaurants, stations, underground railways, etc. The implementation of agrarian reform from time to time has been carried out, but in practice, it still needs to be improved. Two factors cause the implementation of agrarian reform is still not optimal. First, no specific institution exists to carry out and develop agrarian reform agendas, programs, and activities. Second, institutional and regulatory sectoral is still developing in controlling and managing land, forests, and other natural resources because it needs to implement the Basic Agrarian Law of 1960. The implementation of agrarian reform is carried out by the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning and involves ministries/other institutions. Each ministry or institution has the authority to make policies within the boundaries of their respective work corridors. As a result, when implementing tasks and operations, these ministries/agencies often overlap and even beat one another. Agrarian reform can address land ownership and control inequality, not just land redistribution. Agrarian reform can be a way to create an equal distribution of land ownership for prosperity and justice. There are many benefits of implementing agrarian reform, including creating economic independence and food security, contributing to people's income, reducing land disputes, and preventing recurring conflicts that could lead to the nation's disintegration. Agrarian reform as fulfilling farmers' human rights. Agrarian reform is a more equitable restructuring of the structure of control, ownership, use, and utilization of land through asset management and accompanied by access management for the prosperity of the Indonesian people. Asset restructuring is the restructuring of control, ownership, use, and utilization of land in order to create justice in the field of land control and ownership. Meanwhile, access management provides opportunities for access to capital and other assistance to agrarian reform subjects to improve welfare based on land use, also called community empowerment. Agrarian reform as part of the Nawacita has been implemented since President Joko Widodo's first term. In the 2015 to 2019 National Medium-Term Development Plan, agrarian reform was implemented by legalizing 4.5 million hectares of people's land, redistributing 4.5 million hectares of agrarian reform object land, and economic empowerment for subject recipients of agrarian reform object land. Legalization or certification of people's land aims to provide legal certainty regarding ownership of assets so that they can be used for productive economic activities and improving family welfare. This asset legalization activity is carried out through complete systematic land registration with a target area of 3.9 million hectares and transmigration land certification of 0.6 million hectares. Meanwhile, Torah redistribution aims to reduce inequality in land tenure, resolve agrarian conflicts, be a source of prosperity for the people, and at the same time, create jobs. The agrarian reform object land that will be redistributed to the community comes from the release of forest areas covering an area of 4.1 million hectares and XHGU land, abandoned land, and other state land covering an area of 0.4 million hectares. In order to support the implementation of agrarian reform, the government also provides access to manage the use of forest areas to communities living in and around forests through the Social Forestry Program. The Agrarian Reform Program has been running for approximately 6 years under the coordination of the Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs. During this period, many achievements have been made, although many challenges still need to be overcome. These achievements include the legalization, certification of people's land through transmigration land, and complete systematic land registration, which has reached an area of 5.37 million hectares or 119.3% of the target. Meanwhile, state land distributed to subjects who meet the requirements. Redistribution is approximately 1.17 million hectares or around 26.15% of the set target. To support the provision of agrarian reform object land, 1,424,382 hectares of forest area have been released. Apart from that, access has been given to manage the use of forest areas through the Social Forestry Program covering an area of 4.41 million hectares. However, the implementation of agrarian reform has yet to demonstrate sustainable development. The Agrarian Reform Program is more inclined to land distribution rather than community development sustainability. Research method. This study methodology can be classified as normative juridical research, which adopts the perspective that law is a collection of obligatory rules that necessitate implementation. Normative legal research is undertaken to generate arguments in light of a specific issue or problem. The methodology employed in this study is the statutory approach, which encompasses all legally binding instruments, including ministerial rules. The legal materials utilized in this study encompass main legal materials and secondary legal elements. Primary legal resources refer to legal materials organized according to the hierarchical structure of laws and regulations. Secondary legal material refers to legal information derived from scholarly books and periodicals that pertain to a particular legal issue. In addition to employing a statutory approach, this study also incorporates a conceptual approach, explicitly focusing on agricultural reform and sustainable development. In addition, the qualitative data analysis was conducted using legal interpretation methodologies. Results and discussion. Agrarian reform includes improvements in land control and agricultural organization, or legally, in Indonesia, it is also called agrarian reform, which is a process of restructuring, rearranging, the ownership, control, and use of agrarian resources, especially land. Agrarian reform can be interpreted as an effort for the PO through the legalization of assets, publication of forest boundaries, and systematic, planned, and carried out land legalization relatively quickly within a specific and limited period to create prosperity and social justice and pave the way for the establishment of a democratic and just new society, which began with steps to reorganize the control, use, and utilization of land and other natural resources, then followed by some other supporting programs to increase the productivity of farmers in particular and the people's economy in general. Michael Lipton theorized and taxed land reform practices by defining them as legislation intended to redistribute ownership of, claims to, or rights to agricultural land and implemented to benefit people with low incomes and increase their absolute and relative status, power, and income compared to the situation without such legislation. Moreover, if a more comprehensive policy prescription is desired in development, then a country's government must go beyond land redistribution. Namely, it must support other rural development measures such as increased agricultural credit, cooperatives for agricultural supply in the form of inputs, and marketing and extension to facilitate the more productive use of reallocated land. In the development of the agricultural sector in general, there are various opportunities and obstacles to improve it, namely geography, demography, natural resources, ideology, politics, economics, socioculture, and defense and security. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, other factors influence the development of the agricultural sector, namely socio-economic problems and investment development, followed by the use of technology in the agricultural production process. Meanwhile, agrarian reform or land reform, more precisely the reallocation of rights to develop a fair distribution of agricultural land, is believed to be a powerful strategy for promoting long-term economic development, quality environmental sustainability, and thus minimizing social conflict. Conclusion. Steps that can be taken to realize effective land reform include precise mapping and identification of land, inclusive agrarian policy updates, facilitating access to credit and training for small farmers, and strict supervision of the implementation of land reform. Land reform is an essential pillar in sustainable development in Indonesia. With effective land reform, it is hoped that agrarian justice can be created, farmers' welfare can be improved, and sustainable agricultural development can be achieved. Implementing land reform requires close collaboration between government, society, and other stakeholders to achieve these goals.